Genetically modified organism, science, health, and politics. In this lesson, we are going to discuss genetically modified organisms, its definition, as well as the benefits and risks of it. Year 2001, Rosalia Elasus, a former overseas Filipino worker in Singapore turned farmer, attended the Integrated Pest Management Farmers Field School and was introduced to BT corn. This genetically modified corn is resistant to the destructive Asian corn borer. BT corn yielded 7.2 tons per hectare acre as compared to regular yield of 4.2 tons per hectare and no insecticides needed. Rosalie Elasus once became a worker in Singapore that turned into a farmer. She attended the Integrated Pest Management Farmers Field School. She was introduced to BT corn and she found out that GMO helps to resist that corn in destructive threats. Moreover, corn yielded a greater tons per hectare and no insecticides needed. So that is how the GMO works in corn. Year 1951. The term genetic engineering was coined by Jack Williamson, author of the science fiction novel Dragon's Island. Continuous research was held for development, and the genetic engineering was no longer just a fiction. It became reality in science laboratories. On 1951, there was a science fiction novel which is The Dragon's Island. Genetic engineering was a fictional character in the novel, and due to the research of development that makes sense in terms of science, it turned into reality in science laboratories. Next one is genetic engineering. The general process is the deliberate manipulation of the organism's genes, where it may involve the transfer of genes from another organism. Genetic engineering role is to manipulate the genes of an organism. When we say manipulating, it refers to inserting some additional traits of an organism in order to enhance. Next one is, why is genetic engineering important? Genetic engineering allows scientists to insert or suppress desired traits or features into an organism, enhancing a crop's resistance, for instance, or promoting photosynthesis. This artificial manipulation of DNA would never happen in nature. It replaces the traditional method of selective breeding, a common and completely safe practice used by growers. It allows the genetic engineering to insert other traits or features to the organism, and it enhances the organisms, like for example is promoting photosynthesis to an organism. However, this would not happen in nature. It replaces the traditional method of selective breeding, changing its traits and adding some features, and it is commonly practiced by growers or a person who grows a particular type of crop. Next one is genetically modified organisms. Genetically modified organisms, in short GMO, is the term used for an organism created through genetic engineering. The World Health Organization, in short WHO 2014, defines GMO as an organism, either plants, animals, or microorganisms, in which the genetic material, DNA, in short, has been altered in a way that does not occur naturally by mating or natural recombination. Genetically modified organism refers to an organism of which its genes or DNA has been modified or changed, making a new and desirable trait to an organism who defined it, just like the definition from the previous bullet. Genetically modified organisms refers to an organism of which its genes or DNA has been modified or changed, making a new desirable trait to an organism. Next one is genetic modified organism. The development of GMO was perceived to help advance technology for the benefit of human in GMOs in the food and agricultural industries. So the development of these organisms is included in the advanced technology being used to upgrade different industries like agriculture, medicine, and it will benefit the human. Next one is GMO in food and agricultural industries. The Center for Ecogenetics and Environmental Health, in short CEH 2013, identified the following roles of GMOs in the food and agricultural industries: pest resistance, virus resistance, herbicide tolerance, fortification, cosmetic preservation, increased growth rate. Let us proceed to GMOs in food and agricultural industries according to CEH. Here are the following roles of GMO in the food and agricultural industries, and we are going to discuss it one by one. Next one is pest resistance. Genetically modified plants to resist certain pests. An example is BT corn. The DNA genome of the BT corn has been modified with the gene of Bacillus thuringiensis, a soil bacterium that produces proteins which is toxic to corn borer worms. Pest resistance GMO helps to prevent the destruction of plants or organisms from pests. Example, here is the BT corn, a soil bacterium in the corn that produce proteins helps to eliminate corn borer or worms, which is harmful to the corn. Next one is virus resistance. Genetically modified plant to resist certain viruses. An example is GM papaya or rainbow papaya. The papaya ring spot virus, PRSB in short, is known to be detrimental to the papaya plants. The protein of PRSB was introduced to the papaya plant through plant tissue, which turned out to be resistant to the virus itself. The effect was like the vaccines humans have against measles or influenza virus. Pest resistance GMO helps to prevent the destruction of plants or organisms from pests. Example is the papaya. There is a virus from the papaya which is PRSV, and it causes harm to papaya. The protein of it turned out to be resistant to the virus itself. Okay, next one is herbicide tolerance. Herbicide tolerance: over 63% of GM crops grown globally have herbicide tolerance traits. Herbicide tolerance is achieved through the introduction of gene from bacterium conveying resistance to some herbicides in situations where weed pressure is high. The use of such crops has resulted in a reduction in the quantity of the herbicides used. Herbicide spray. Genetically modified plant to tolerate herbicide. An example is Roundup Ready soybean. Glyphosate, an herbicide for weeds, was introduced to soybean, making it tolerant to the herbicide itself. Farmers farmers then can spray the herbicide killing the weeds but not the soybeans. Herbicide tolerance: it helps the organisms to survive and reproduce after herbicide treatment. Example is Roundup Ready soybean. Soybean it to- will it tolerant to the herbicide for itself. So once the farmers sprayed the herbicide, the weeds will be killed but not the soybeans since it's tolerant. Next one is fortification. Genetically modified plants fortified with certain minerals. An example is golden rice. Beta carotene, a precursor or vitamin A, was introduced through biosynthesis genes to rice, making the rice grains fortified with vitamin A. Fortification GMO improves the plants or organisms by adding nutrients to the food and improving its nutrition status. Examples example is golden rice. It added it added nutrient to it, making the rice grains fortified with vitamin A. So next one is cosmetic preservation. Genetically modified plants resist natural discoloration. An example is Arctic apple. The apple variety was genetically modified to suppress the browning of the apple due to superficial damage. Cosmetic preservation, it helps to maintain the natural color of a plant or organism. Like example is an apple. We know that it turns brown once we let it open or cut its cut it inside part. So the purpose of GMO is to maintain its color and prevent it from turning brown. So next one is increased growth rate. A genetically modified organism that has higher yield in growth than normal species. An example is Aqua Advantage salmon, a gene from an ocean pout. An eel-like fish was introduced to Pacific Chinook salmon, making the salmon grow faster than the normal rate. Increased growth rate from the normal size of an organism, it could still be bigger than the usual plant, like the salmon, for example. It increases the growth rate and grow it, and it grows faster than the normal or the usual size. GMOs in non-food crops and microorganisms. Genetically modified organisms, in short GMOs, in non-food crop and microorganisms involve the following. One is flower production. Two is paper production. Next one is pharmaceutical productions. Next one is bioremediation. Here are some uses of GMO in food crops and microorganisms. Next one is flower production. GMOs in the flower production are seen in the modified color and extended bars life of flowers. Example, blue roses. The so-called blue roses, which are in reality lilac or purple, contain cyanidin 3,5 diclocoside together with large amounts of flavonols. The introduction of the flavonoid or cyanide producing rose cultivars diverts the anthocyanin biosynthetic pathway towards the production delphinidin glucosides and the flower to colored to blue. Flower production, it modifies color and extend the life of the flowers not not be easily withered. Example is the blue rose. Originally, it is lilac or purple color, but because they have something they have something to it to turn into a blue color. Next one is paper production. Modified characteristics of trees for higher yield of paper production. Example, popular trees. Lignin is a complex polymer in trees removed from wood to make paper through the craft process by inserting genes that code for ferulic acid in young popular trees. The lignin structure is modified lignin, easier to break down. It creates a higher yield of paper production. Example is the popular trees. By inserting some genes to it, it does not rot easily and making more production of the paper. Next one is pharmaceutical productions. Modified plants to produce pharmaceutical production. Example is periwinkle plants. Bacterial genes were added to the periwinkle plant to enhance the production of biovinylplastine, an alkaloid usually added to drugs for cancer treatments like Hodgkin's lymphoma. Modified plants can produce pharmaceutical product like, for example, is the periwinkle plants. It enhances the production of this plant, and an alkaloid to it can be added to drugs for cancer treatment. Bioremediation, use of modified plants that can assist in the bioremediation of polluted sites. Example, shrub tobacco, Nicotiana or shrub tobacco genetically modified with phytochek, phytocalatin TAPCS11 is used for bioremediation. It shows the high level accumulation of zinc, lead, cadmium, nickel, and boron produces high biomass. When we say bioremediation, it consumes and breaks down environmental pollutants in order to clean up a polluted site. The use of modified plants is to clean up polluted sites, and it is helpful when it comes to the environment. Next one is benefits of GMOs. Studies show some of the potential benefits of GMOs is increased in harvest, control in fertility, increase in food processing, improvement of desirable characteristics, nutritional and pharmaceutical enhancement, and it reduced the use of fertilizer and pesticides. The things listed here are the benefits of GMOs, just like the extension of benefit we discussed from the previous slide. So next one is increase the harvest. GMO crops resistance to pests and diseases means an increases in potential growth and harvest. The crops increase the potential growth and harvest since there are some resistance to pests and diseases which threaten the destruction of crops. Controlling infertility, controlling the purity of the hybrid seeds, GMO seeds, ensures higher yields. GMO helps to control fertility, making it more fertile and ensure the greater amount to harvest. Next one is increasing food processing. Altered characteristics of GMO crops help ease food processing. It is also the same with the previous one. It helps to ease the food processing and produce more food. Improvement of desirable characteristics. GMOs offer longer shelf life, enhanced color and taste, enhanced production or reduction of enzymes and other modified characteristics of plants, animals, and microorganisms. One example here is the canned goods that we have there are added characteristics. They are making it longer shelf life and also to improve its taste and production. Next one is nutritional and pharmaceutical enhancement. GMO crops like maize fortified with lysine and golden rice fortified with vitamin A and iron there are now edible vaccines for viral and diarrheal diseases. The nutritional status of an organism will enhance. An example is golden rice. It makes fortified with vitamin A and iron and it seems like a vaccine to prevent viral diarrheal diseases. Next one is reduce the use of fertilizer and pesticides. Some of the GMO crops that have been approved for the public consumption and are already in the market include corn, papaya, soybean, sugar beets, and squash. Most of these were made to be resistant to pests. Some of the common food with GMOs are Kellogg's, Corn Flakes, Quaker, Chewy, granola bars, Ultra Slim Fast Quaker, Yellow Cornmeal, and Alpo Dry Pet Food. GMOs help to make an organism resistant to pests, so it there is no need to put much fertilizer and pesticides to the organism. So next one is potential risk of GMOs. Despite the promising claims of GMOs, the opponents of GMOs claims we have the following major concerns about the opponents of GMOs. Since genetic engineering is still a young branch of science, there are inadequate studies on the effects of GMOs to humans and the environment. However, there are still risks of GMOs since genetic engineering would would not still be considered professional when it comes to science, and this branch of science is still new, and and the studies conducted regarding this one were still not enough. Next one is potential risk of GMOs. Genetic engineering promote mutation in organisms which the long-term effect is still unknown. Human consumption of GMOs might have the following effect. More allergic reaction. GMO food may trigger more allergic reaction. Next one is antibiotic resistance. GMO food contains antibiotic resistant genes. This may cause disease causing bacteria. Nutritional value. GMO food may have change in nutritional value. Since the studies were still inadequate, the long-term effect of those GMO is still unknown. These are some disadvantages in using GMO as well, including the allergic reaction abnormalities of the plants. It can also cause disease causing bacteria. It may change the nutritional value of a plant. Next one is potential environmental risk caused by GMOs. Rising gene flow, the emergence of new forms of resistance, and secondary effects and weed problems, recombination of virus and bacteria to produce new. These are the environmental risks that. Hold on. Wait lang po. Okay, very fast. Rising gene flow, the emergence of new forms of resistance and secondary effects and weed problems, recombination of virus and bacteria to produce new. These are the environmental risks that might happen caused by GMO. There would be complication in terms of genes, new forms of resistance, and secondary effects and with problems, and there is a tendency that the virus and bacteria will combine and produce a new one. Next one is direct environmental risks. Introduction of the GMOs in the natural environment may disrupt the natural communities through competition or interference. The possibility of unexpected behavior of the GMOs in the environment, if it escapes its intended use, and may pose threats or become pests and may cause harmful effects to the ecosystem processes if GMOs interfere with the natural biochemical cycles. These there are direct environmental risks, including the disruption of natural communities. It will no longer be natural since GMO was already there. It can also serve as a threat to the environment due to its unexpected behavior and may become pests. Lastly, its harmful effects to the ecosystem and may be hindrance to the natural cycle of biochemical. Next one is an indirect environmental risk. Alteration of agricultural practices like managing negative impacts of GMOs to the environment, such as the evolution of insects, pests, and weeds that became resistant to GMO crops, may have impacts to biodiversity caused by the alteration in agricultural practices, and it may have varied environmental impacts due to the GMO's interaction and release in the natural environment. On the other hand, there are also indirect environmental risks. Evolution of insects pests and weeds. There may also have impacts to biodiversity, and it may also have impacts in the environment itself. So the next one is potential human health risks caused by GMOs. Consumption of GMOs may have adverse effects since it is naturally or organically produced. Consumption of GMOs may alter the balance of existing microorganisms in the human digestive system, and production of toxins may be detrimental to human health. GMOs can also be risky to human health, including the following: since it is not natural, it can cause complication to the digestive system, and the production of toxins may be harmful to your health. Next one is other potential risks that raise major concerns. One is Human Genome Project, HGP in short. Next one is mutation of genetically engineered microorganisms. Next one is cloning. These are also potential risks that raise major concerns in the HGP is mapping of human genes to provide a framework for research. Second one is the genetically modified bacteria and viruses may mutate to become more resistant or virulent that may cause more dreadful diseases for human beings. Lastly is the cloning. I know all of you are familiar with this one. So it is making a replica or another one similar to an organism. Next one is biosafety on GMOs. GMOs. The Codex Alimentarius Commission, in short Codex. Next one is Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. Next one is International Trade Agreement on Labeling of GM Food and Food Products. Biosafety is another term for biosecurity, refers to the prevention of large-scale loss of biological integrity, focusing both on ecology and human health. These three are some initiatives to ensure biosafety of GMOs. Codex is one of the responsible for some guidelines and principles for the food safety. Cartagena Protocol on the biosafety requires exporters to seek consent from the importers before its shipment, so it gives boundary as well. And the last one is the agreement to the label the products, and it gives rights to reject and accept those products. Okay, lastly is GMO in Philippine context. The Philippines has improved a new set of rules on genetically modified organisms after a top court demanded an overhaul of previous regulations, providing relief to farmers and importers worried that any delay would spark a food crisis. The new rules are expected to improve transparency in the approval process for permits to plant, import, and commercialize GM products, including enhanced regulations on risk assessments and involvement of local governments. GMO's critics argue that the technological poses risk to public health, while advocates say such fears have not been scientifically proven, and that high-yielding genetically altered crops would help ensure food security as the world's population grows. So Philippines became the first one who approved GMO food because they find it as a solution for the food crisis. The set of rules is improve the process of the plant and import products. However, there are some people who were trying to protest because it produced risks to the community, including the public health. And there are still threats since it is not specifically proven and studies were still inadequate. So that is all po. Thank you.